This is the AFN. Last Friday in Frankfurt for the victims of Tuesday night's helicopter crash at Wiesbaden Air Base.
We've lost an important part of the 5th Corps family. Every soldier has two families, their immediate family and the Army family. And as part of both families, we're here today to pay tribute to 4 great soldiers who have dedicated their lives to the service of our great nation. Major General Jarrett Robertson, Colonel Will Dinsberger, Colonel Bob Kelly, and young specialist Gary Rhodes. These fallen comrades that we honor here today are outstanding soldiers, husbands, and fathers. Their legacy will be their children in our memories. They will never be forgotten.
Defense Secretary Les Aspin said the airdrops have allowed more land convoys to carry aid into Bosnia, and it might be possible to suspend the airdrops since the military considers them to be riskier and less efficient. While the Bosnian airdrop has drawn worldwide media attention to Rhein-Main Air Base, the front gate is flanked by satellite news-gathering vans competing to cover the headline story out of Europe these days. It was also a chance for USAFE to show off to the world in more ways than one.
General Robert Oakes was visiting the crews back in the warehouse, palletizing the cargo, but he wasn't the center of attention today. All eyes were on the flight line, where ABC's Good Morning America was preparing to link Rhein-Main with a just awakening U.S. public.
Nazi Airman Ramster, 37th ALS here in Rhein-Main, Germany. Good morning, America!
The spotlight beamed strongest on a pair of USAFE pilots who were both typical of C-130 commanders and unique to the U.S. audience as military couples. Captains Pat and Amy Smelly of the 37th Airlift Squadron have 21 combined years of flying experience and have piloted their C-130s into some of the most dangerous locations possible these days, Sarajevo and war-torn Bosnia. But that didn't prevent a little nervous tension about appearing live on network television.
Rhein-Main Air Base in Germany. It's good to have both of you with us.
Good Morning America host Charles Gibson asked about the mission and the expected question, do you worry about your spouse?
I mean, you worry about them, but not to the point where you don't do your own job.
Well, I understand.
A moment in the spotlight and then back to work. At Rhein-Main
On the hard-to-reach sections of the Bosnian war zone, there's no independent confirmation at this point that the aid got where it was intended. But ABC's Jerry King says day one of the operation is already being labeled a success.
According to the U.S. military, this first humanitarian airdrop went very, very well. But one of the planes had to turn back because of mechanical problems. A spokesman says the 3 others dropped more than 21 tons of relief supplies. What he cannot say is how accurate the drop was.
Because we have no one on the ground who can report back directly to us, it'll be difficult to measure for any particular mission.
The news conference that followed this first mission was notable for its lack of news.
I'll just say that they took off in the late evening and they completed their mission in the very early morning.
Somewhere over eastern Bosnia, the bundles of military meals and medical supplies, some weighing as much as 1,500 pounds, were pushed out of the aircraft. Only then, on their way back home, did the Air Force crews begin to relax. They reported no evidence of hostile fire from the ground, but what would happen if there was?
Wherever the threat is, well, we'll see who's shooting at us and we'll just fly away from them, basically.
Officials say the U.S. humanitarian relief flights will continue as long as is necessary, presumably until the warring factions in Bosnia agree to allow relief supplies to be distributed on the ground. Jerry King,
8,000 tons of supplies, food, and equipment into Sarajevo. The commander of the Rhein-Main unit heading up the mission has defended the accuracy of the high-level airdrops. 45th Airlift Wing Commander Brigadier General Donald Loringer told reporters they have information that the food and medicine pallets were right on target.
The remarkable point about that tender is that not one of them is more than 500 yards from the original intended impact point, which is, quite frankly, shooting their eyes out, so to speak, to put it in words. It's very, very accurate. So we're very, very pleased, and I'm very, very proud of the young men and women who have put this mission together and are actually putting the relief supplies precisely where we have been told they should be put.
General Loringer said the crew navigators calculate winds and airspeed and use computers to determine when to drop the bundles for accuracy. Starting this summer, Defense Department civilians can take up to 12 weeks of unpaid leave each year for family emergencies. The entitlement is part of the Family and Medical Leave Act that became law last month. Sergeant George Jorns has more.
To qualify for family leave, Defense Department civilians must be permanent full-time employees with at least 12 months of federal service. The 12 weeks of leave can be taken at one time or in increments over a year. In some cases, workers may also request to work a reduced schedule using unpaid family leave for part of a work day or work week. Defense officials say the new family leave policy is not that different from what DOD has been doing all along. But now the leave will be guaranteed.
The department has always provided leave without pay for a variety of circumstances, but that's been up to management discretion. Now the employee is entitled to up to 12 weeks of family leave for a variety of circumstances.
Those circumstances include childbirth or the care of a newborn, adoption or foster care of a child, care of a sick spouse, child, or parent, or the worker's own serious illness. And employees will be asked to give up to 30 days' notice of expected family leave when possible. While workers are on leave, they won't lose any of the employee benefits they accrued before their leave began. They can also make arrangements to continue their federal employees' health insurance. When workers return from family leave, they'll either come back to their original position or to a position with the same pay, status, and conditions of employment.
So it doesn't have to be the exact position, but it has to be one that is identical in virtually every substantive respect.
Officials say that since DOD has offered many of these benefits in the past, they expect only a slight increase in the number of workers requesting family leave when the law goes into effect. And they say the department should have little trouble accommodating them all. Air Force Sergeant George Jorns, Washington.
The new family leave entitlement goes into effect August 5th. It does not apply to the military. However, service members can be granted emergency leave by their commanders under certain circumstances. And military women can get up to 6 weeks of convalescent leave after childbirth. All military leave is with pay. RAF Bentwaters in the United Kingdom is in the final stages preparing to return the base to the British government. Airman Brett Baker was on hand as the last of the base's 4 A-10 squadrons were inactivated.
A-10s have been a common sight in the skies of the United Kingdom for the last 14 years. Those days, however, are coming to an end. In a ceremony at RAF Bentwaters, the 92nd Tactical Fighter Squadron was inactivated. The 92nd was the last A-10 unit in the UK. The squadron arrived in England in 1951 flying a much different kind of aircraft, the F-86 Super Sabre. Originally designated as the 92nd Pursuit Squadron, the Skulls have racked up an impressive list of achievements. 182,000 sorties, over 500 deployments to 22 nations. They were the first A-10 squadron in USAFE and successfully completed 4 deployments to Operation Provide Comfort. At the inactivation ceremony, Colonel Roger Radcliffe, commander of the 81st Tactical Fighter Wing, commended the members of the 92nd.
I am proud of you individually, and as a unit, and as the total Air Force family.
When Lieutenant Colonel Bill McGee assumed command of the 92nd, he issued the men and women of this proud unit a challenge in the face of mission completion.
If we worked together and we stood tall, that we would complete that mission, and we'd do it with fun. And we have had the fun along the way. And I'm just sad that it's finally at that conclusion.
The A-10s will continue to fly training sorties out of RAF Bentwaters until March, when the last planes take off for Spangdahlem Air Base, Germany. With the Cold War I and the Air Force restructuring, the 92nd's colors have been sheathed after 51 years of service to the Air Force, and they now must wait until such time as they are needed again to answer America's call to the defense of liberty and freedom. Senior Airman Brett Baker.
From Lodges Field, the Azores Islands of Portugal, the crossroads of the Atlantic, I'm Brigadier General Tom Philp, Commander. Men and women of the United States Forces Azores and the United States Air Force 65th Support Wing would like to say, Good morning, America!
And good morning, everyone. I'm Charles Gibson.
And I'm Joan Lennon. It is Thursday, March 4th.
Little story behind that group of people who just said good morning. It's the Azores, the islands. We are seen there. The Good Morning America is seen there. They get it off satellite. It comes in at noon their time. And somebody had the temerity to suggest that perhaps another program should be put on that satellite that comes in. And they all took a vote. We won? We won overwhelmingly, yes.
All right.
So they had talks in Moscow today on the conditions for Russian participation in the airdrops. A spokesman for the State Committee for Emergencies, the body involved in preparing the Russian side of the operation, said officials met with the U.S. team to work out the basis for Russian flights into NATO air bases and other details. Meanwhile, the U.S. Air Force made another airdrop over Bosnia this morning. Nearly 25 tons of food and medical supplies were dropped near Zepa. No incidents were reported. The United States has now airdropped over 100 tons of supplies to war-torn Bosnia. Sarajevo also received supplies today as 3 C-130s airlifted in 64 tons of supplies and food. 5 months ago, the Supreme Allied Commander Europe, General John Shalikashvili, put his signature on a document which put an end to NATO countries taking care of themselves in the event of war. His signature drew NATO member countries together to deal with crisis as a corps, and although the corps won't be fully operational until 1995, they've already begun training. Sergeant Mikey Perkins reports.
The restructuring of NATO's strategic concept called for a force capable of meeting the risks and challenges of the alliance. It was out of this restructuring that the Allied Rapid Reaction Corps was born. Comprised of 12 nations thus far, the ARRC's roles include the demonstration of an alliance and solidarity of NATO members, reinforcement, combat, peace support operations, and related roles. The mission of the Allied Rapid Reaction Corps is to deploy up to 4 divisions of Corps troops on military operations in support of the Supreme Allied Commander Europe's crisis management options. A press day afforded the commander of the ARRC, British Lieutenant General Sir Jeremy Mackenzie, to explain the U.S. military's role in the ARC.
Well, they're part of the Ace Rapid Reaction Corps. The United States Army has 1 AD as a division assigned to the Rapid Reaction Corps. You have with your armed forces officers and men assigned to this headquarters. You have as a senior officer a brigadier general assigned to this headquarters, and therefore they're very much part of the team, and that's why they're here. They are part of the multinational aspect of the Ace Rapid Reaction Corps, and a very important one indeed.
The first phase of training for the Corps involves the deployment of ARRC headquarters into the field, and we'll find out what that entails on Monday. I'm Sergeant Mikey Perkins, AFN News.
The Commander-in-Chief of Ground Forces in Russia made his first visit to the United States recently. Private Kim Bauman and Sergeant George McNamara report from 2 of the stops he made.
Members of the 6th Infantry Division Light welcome Chief of Staff General Gordon R. Sullivan and his Russian counterpart, General Colonel Vladimir Semenov, Chief of Ground Forces Russian Federation, to Alaska recently. The Russian entourage landed at Elmendorf Air Force Base, where they were greeted by General Sullivan, Major General Bramlett, and Air Force officials. The primary purpose of this visit is to improve relations between the nation's military forces. Another reason for this visit was to demonstrate the close relationship between American military installations and the neighboring civilian communities. Soldiers from the 6th Infantry Division's 1st Brigade provided demonstrations of equipment and uniforms used in the Arctic. Generals Sullivan and Semenov then put on Kevlar helmets and flak jackets to observe a live-fire training exercise. They observed a demonstration of urban combat techniques and close-quarters live-fire training. Lieutenant Colonel Leslie Brooke, 1st Battalion, 501st Airborne Infantry Regiment, presented General Colonel Semenov with a set of jump wings, making him the first Russian general to receive honorary airborne wings from the oldest U.S. Airborne Battalion. In turn, General Colonel Semenov presented Lieutenant Colonel Brooke with a crest representing his office as commander of the Ground Forces Russian Federation. The Army Chief of Staff, General Sullivan, and General Colonel Semenov traveled to the National Training Center, Fort Irwin, California, where other 6th Infantry Division Light soldiers are training. The generals will continue on to other installations in the U.S., including the Pentagon. Reporting for the 6th Infantry Division Light, I'm Private First Class Kim Bowman.
They command on different sides of the world, but Chief of Staff General Gordon Sullivan and General Colonel Vladimir Semenov share the common bond all soldiers do, the field. As part of their counterpart exchange, the two soldiers visited Fort Irwin's National Training Center.
Directly to our front, this battle position is also reinforced by a company of infantry. What we understand currently is going on is the Blue Force is going to try to come through the gap, which is about 11 kilometers to your direct front.
From observation post number 4, they had a bird's eye view of 6th Infantry Division soldiers in the field. For General Semenoff, it marked his first visit to the United States and the desert training environment. Fort Irwin was one of 6 stops the Russian general made during his week-long exchange. He also toured the Pentagon with General Sullivan, where the two met with other senior Army leaders. General Semenoff ended his stay by laying a wreath at the Tomb of the Unknowns at Arlington Cemetery, honoring the sacrifices of America's military men and women as
Good morning, soldier. Good morning, ma'am. Hello, new recruit, an officer in command. I'm proud to know you. Just thought I'd show you. I'm glad to see the Army is in your hands. Freedom calls from time to time, and you're the ones that lay it on the line. And so I dedicate this song to you. Sometimes it's a hot ride, but you got a lot of pride. It shows in the way you do all the things you do. You don't do it 'cause you have to. You're not in it for yourself. You don't do it for the glory or the right to brag. You do it 'cause you want to, like your fathers did before you. You do it for the flag. You're that shooter navigator,
that computer operator.
You're the driver, the company clerk, the soldier on the ground.
You're the medic and the doctor.
You repair the helicopter. You're the spokes in the wheel that make the whole deal go around. You're the parts of a working team. You're the hearts where freedom rings. You're the eye of the cobra that hovers on high. You're the minds that map the road, the backs that share the load. You are the hands that take hold and make it fly. So good evening, soldier.
Good evening, man.
All over the USA and in foreign lands. I'm proud to know you.
I'm proud to know.
Just thought I'd show you. I'm glad to see the Army is in your hands. And you don't do it 'cause you have to. You're not in it for yourself. You don't do it for...
The food that was dropped was different from previous bundles because they contained food donated by the Turkish government. Future airdrops will contain food donated by Norway and the United Kingdom. Sarajevo also received aid as 91 tons of food and supplies were airlifted in. To date, the U.S. Air Force has airdropped over 300 tons of food and supplies into eastern Bosnia. The airdrop missions are difficult in themselves, but when you're wearing oxygen masks and flying some 2 miles above ground in an unpressurized airplane, well, it makes the whole thing just a bit tougher. Sergeant Jim Frost went along on one of the C-130 airdrop missions and experienced what the air crews go through on a nightly basis.
20,000, 21,000.
Before air crews take off on another high-risk mission over eastern Bosnia, they receive a briefing from the aircraft commander.
The plan of attack here is we're going to take off single ship. We'll fly down to Italy. We'll rejoin over Italy. We'll do the airdrop. We'll do an AWATS drop. We'll be tail end Charlie. On the way out, someplace in Italian airspace. We'll split up. We'll come back single ship.
Before they can leave the ground, the crew must know exactly what to expect and what to do if the unexpected happens.
Crew door, if we need to go out, we'll have
Once in the air, the crews calmly carry out their jobs. Everyone knows there's a chance someone may shoot at the aircraft, but individual fears don't get in the way of the job. Still, the crew knows the danger is real. The best they can hope for is a drop zone under a blanket of clouds with clear skies above. C-130 pilot Captain James Smith explains why.
If they can't see us, they can't shoot us. And if they can't shoot us, that's good.
During high-altitude airdrops, crews put on oxygen masks. The crews get the air they need, but the equipment is somewhat cumbersome and adds to the difficulty of the mission.
It's a little bit tougher to communicate. It's a little more bulky. It's just something that we don't practice a whole lot. So
I think you should learn something every day to make you a better person, and with this kind of things, it keeps you in that line.
At the end of the mission, everything gets very quiet on the aircraft. The maintenance ground crews come on board to check the aircraft out and fix all the problems. So these aircraft are ready to go again. Crews go off for crew rest, and they'll be ready too. Staff Sergeant Jim Frost, Air Force News, Rhein-Main Air Base, Germany.
In the wake of the airdrop mission, the Army may appear to be changing from a war-fighting machine to a humanitarian aid provider. Not so, says the Army's top enlisted soldier. Sergeant Hank Husingfeld reports.
Sergeant Major of the Army Richard Kidd says the Army has picked up additional missions such as aid to Somalia and Hurricane Andrew in Florida because no other organization can respond as quickly with self-sustaining capabilities.
So we can superimpose ourselves into a humanitarian or hurricane assistance kind of a situation, the Somalia situation, and do those. But that's not our primary mission. Our primary mission stays warfighting. We will, when directed to do so, carry out those other missions.
The Sergeant Major has traveled around the world visiting soldiers in humanitarian missions. He says they handle humanitarian aid just as well as they would during war.
It's kind of interesting to see a soldier that can be a tremendous warrior and then when placed in the humanitarian role become a tremendous compassionate person, which we've always known soldiers to be.
Sergeant Major Kidd adds, as the Army downsizes, it will become more interdependent on reservists and National Guardsmen in warfighting and humanitarian aid.
Good afternoon. Budget Director Leon Panetta says the U.S. will soon announce plans to close a large number of overseas military bases, primarily in Europe. Panetta said a list of bases would be presented by the Pentagon when it gives its spending plans to Congress. He predicted the closings would be mostly in the European area because that's where most of the personnel cuts are taking place. Tomorrow, Defense Secretary Les Aspin will recommend shutting up to 30 domestic bases and shrinking up to 150 others in a move that would cost tens of thousands of military and civilian jobs. Russia has agreed to take part in the airdrop mission over Bosnia, but will send aid to only 6 destinations, all of them Serb communities in Muslim-held areas. This coming from the Bosnian Serb commander. Meanwhile, 3 U.S. cargo planes airdropped nearly 21 tons of food and supplies over the town of Zepa. More than a ton of the relief goods were donated by Norway. And Belgium will assign an entire Army division to the planned European Corps founded by France and Germany, a senior French official said today. Belgium has earmarked an armored and mechanized division of 10,000 men in peacetime and 15,000 in wartime. France and Germany announced last May the establishment of the 35,000-strong Army Corps, headquarters in Strasbourg, France. The U.S. initially voiced strong reservations about the Corps, worrying it would compete with the NATO alliance for resources. France and Germany reached an agreement with NATO in December, under which the